There's on O'Connell Bridge here. The Dublin legend Arthur Fields spent 50 years standing in the same spot taking photographs of people. To date, nobody has stood in the same spot taking photographs for as long as Arthur Fields.
If you ask anybody that got their photograph taken, they say, oh yeah, the man on the bridge.
You say you can't travel back in time, but if you look at these old photographs, in your mind it brings you back in time.
If you stand in the same place for 50 years, taking thousands of photographs, you can become immune to what you're doing.
I mean, how many people have done that, have stood on a Dublin street for 50 years? I don't think we could even set out to do a project like that today.
Arthur Fields was not your average Irishman. His complex story begins in the Ukraine, where his parents originated.
I always associate the Fiddler on the Roof with our story, namely that you've got the persecution in the Ukraine of Jews, and they left the Ukraine in something like 1890, thereabouts.
They left Kiev, and I believe it was in the middle of a snowstorm, and all the Jews were being expelled.
My dad was born in 1901 in Dublin. He was one of 5 brothers. He had a sister, which we don't know too much about, but he changed his name from Abraham Fellman to Arthur Fields. That was because of the stigma attached to Jews in the early part of the century.
There was quite an anti-Jewish feeling in Dublin, and they felt it was a safer thing to do. A bit of a verbal disguise, if you like, which, if you think about it, Feldman, man of the field, Fields, it makes sense.
Arthur didn't find his calling for quite a while, and like many in the Jewish community in Dublin, he originally started out in the tailoring industry, but that didn't last too long.
Well, my dad chose street photography probably because there was money to be made.
I think it's quite interesting in terms of the history of photography, the fact that O'Connell Street was chosen, because O'Connell Street and Westmoreland Street and Grafton Street were known as the photographic mile, in that there were 60 photographic studios along that stretch. But O'Connell Street is a natural choice for this type of photographer as an intersection. You're crossing from the north to the south, the 2 shopping districts, so everybody crossed the bridge at some stage.
Street photography of Arthur Fields' variety was not considered to be at the top of the tree, largely because there were a lot of charlatans operating in that area. Arthur was one of those people who was there for the long haul. He certainly knew how to take pictures, to get good expressions. Now, that's not easy.
He would approach them and take the photograph, well, pretend to take the photograph, and then stop them and ask would they like the photograph, give them a ticket, and then they go to a local studio, pay for the photograph.
He had to be persuasive, but he had to be persuasive in a friendly manner. Now, that takes a bit of doing. And it's these personal skills, this way of just communicating partly by eye, really was the making of his living, because he couldn't practice his photography until his human communication had been perfected.
In the latter days, I think it was certainly more difficult because there were more and more people at that time would have been interested in photography and would have had cameras.
He eventually stopped taking photographs when he physically couldn't go out anymore. It would have been around about 1988. I remember that because there is a Polaroid photograph that a chap sent.
In 1979, I had the opportunity to visit this country, and I noticed this little man. I'm a photographer myself, so I was very interested in this figure who struggled to catch the attention of the people walking quickly with little time to spend. This one is the first one I took of him. When I came back again in 1988, I promised myself I will ask him a photo. And that is a photo he took of me with this strange little cover, handmade. And he signed his name here, Abraham Feldman, and it was taken in August 21, 1988.
Arthur chose to sign with his original Jewish name at the very end of his career. Perhaps he knew his public life had come to an end. Maybe the world had changed and being Jewish was no longer something to hide. Soon Arthur retired from street photography at the tender age of 87. He didn't leave the bridge as Arthur Fields. He didn't retire as Abraham Feldman. Arthur retired as the legendary Man on the Bridge.